Hey, what's up everybody? Happy Sunday. This is Frank with Frankly Collecting. I'm giving a 2-week market update video on the MetaZoo Nightfall booster boxes and other products. Not too much has changed, but we do have a little bit of news to help fuel what we should be looking for over the next few weeks and all the way through the end of December as well. Get started, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Trying to put out at least one video a week and maybe a few more, and hopefully I can do even more than that as I continue to grow my channel. So first of all, let's look. These prices are consolidating pretty strongly about where they were 1 week ago. So we talked about how prices had really dipped down to around that $230 mark as mountains of supply continue to hit TCG Player, eBay, local game stores. And so you can see here, Nightfall booster box around $230 market price. Nightfall blister packs have fallen even more. I believe they were around like $15 last we checked. First edition spell books down to around $55, and those seem to be pretty steady. And the most recent drops have come in the form of the first edition event boxes, which are dipping below $30 now. I think these are pretty good prices to come in and scoop up product if you are looking to potentially invest in any of these for a long-term hold. It probably, who knows? First of all, if they go up at all, it could take a while, or they could rocket up like Cryptid Nation booster boxes did. This is all just my speculation for fun, so remember, this is not financial advice. Honestly, this is kind of like a hobby for me, and I just really enjoy going after the product for my own personal collecting, and also trying to speculate on certain singles and sealed product just because it's kind of fun, and to see if I can make a little bit of side money for fun. So honing in on the Nightfall booster box, we are seeing consistent sales every day. And honestly, it feels like the supply is getting a little bit lower. I remember checking periodically and just seeing stacks of like 20 or so booster boxes frequently being listed on TCG Player from different outlets. And as of right now, there is only one of these giant stacks, limited edition card with 20 of them. And if you look at most of these listings, first of all, there aren't that many. I mean, you can scroll through the page pretty quickly, and most of the listings are like between 1 and 3 or 4. I mean, here's one with like 6 and 7. But these like 20 double-digit stacks, you're seeing fewer of those. I remember, for example, One-Eyed Jacks having a lot more than 6. So those seem to be selling either locally with that game store, or maybe being bought off of TCG Player. But overall, you're just seeing fewer of these giant stacks being listed. So are they being bought up, or are they taking them down, deciding to maybe hold them should the price increase? I haven't been able to check enough to know that for sure. But overall, the listings on TCG Player at least seem to be lowering in supply. Rudy from Alpha Investments did do like at least a preview video of all of his products getting boxed up. I'm not sure if that patron sale had already happened or if it was about to happen, but I haven't heard anything more about that since. And I haven't seen too many of those like Rudy bundles, if they were sold, hit the eBay market, but I haven't been following too closely either. So who knows what effect that will have on the market. At least the listings on TCG Player look to be getting a little bit shorter in supply, even though the price has not really started to ratchet up yet. If you look here, we had 2. I think these are the lowest sales that I've seen since the release. Boxes go for $169.99, and these were damaged wrapper boxes. So these were absolute steals, I think, for the buyers who were able to pick these up. I imagine they sold pretty quickly. If you were looking just to open boxes, these are like the perfect boxes to do, because in the pictures they looked pretty legitimate aside from just some wrapper damage. So I imagine that if they got some pretty decent boxes, that there could have been some money to be made from there, flipping the singles, or at least really good deals if they were looking to get those singles for their personal collection. As we look down, we're seeing again really good consolidation daily around that $230 mark, plus or minus a few dollars, dipping a little bit below, coming up a little bit above, and so on. So I'm feeling pretty strong about that price so far, given the fact that they're not printing any more of it. The one wild card factor I would think would be on the negative side, still people continuing to wait on their own product that they intend to sell, or maybe people going ahead and deciding that they're not optimistic about MetaZoo's future and taking whatever they have and listing it as fast as possible, which hasn't really been done so far. At least the supply that has been hitting in mass seems to be either selling, or sellers are changing their mind and removing them from the market. It will continue to be interesting to follow just what the supply is doing, because it seems like the demand is there, that people are picking up these boxes. It's just going to depend on how much more supply is going to be hitting to potentially outweigh the current growing or even dwindling demand. If you guys haven't checked out this YouTube channel called Ben Trading Cards, I highly recommend you do. Ben uploads really often, and he focuses a lot on smaller TCGs like Flesh and Blood, more recently MetaZoo. He also does a lot of Genesis Battle of Champions, which I don't know too much about. He started talking about Polywog, which is a recently kickstarted product that's supposed to be coming out at some point. And he put out just today a video talking about Logan Paul possibly coming in with MetaZoo. There was some kind of Instagram post or social media post or something where King Pokemon, or Gary from the Pokemon world, who has already been a big champion for MetaZoo, he was at some table at some kind of gaming convention with Logan Paul. I don't follow Logan Paul, and I know about all the Logan Paul box breaks he did with Pokemon a few months back, but I haven't heard about him doing anything specifically with MetaZoo. It would make sense because there are other big names like Steve Aoki involved with MetaZoo. I believe Sports Card Investor in the sports card world, who I don't follow really that much because I'm not really into the sports card world, has started doing MetaZoo. I would imagine that if Logan Paul does something with MetaZoo, that's definitely going to give some kind of bump. So that's going to be really interesting to see. I don't know why he would be doing some kind of MetaZoo opening at a game convention if there wasn't going to be some kind of media connecting him to MetaZoo. Either then, and maybe I've missed some kind of news that's come out since I saw this video and since I've made my video. But yeah, it would be interesting if something comes out within the next few weeks involving Logan Paul. I think that's going to have a really good impact on the MetaZoo market. I can't imagine that having a negative effect or people just not caring. It's going to have some kind of bump. We'll see how long it lasts, but I think that would be a good catalyst since there seems to be a little bit of a lull right now following Nightfall's initial release and getting past Halloween. And he also mentioned in this video, and he's mentioned it in another video. I'll put this video in the description below. But and he's mentioned this in another video on his channel, where sometimes you'll see a bump in the trading card markets in November and December, and Ben's reasoning was that people get paid bonuses in November and December, and that a lot of times people will spend that bonus money in the trading card world. So I thought that was an interesting analysis, and it meshed pretty well with what was happening over the last year. At least there was consensus in the trading card world, whether it or not it is to be believed or to what extent, that some portion of the population was perhaps using stimulus money to buy Pokemon graded cards, and I think sealed product as well. And that seems pretty logical. So if that were true, and if it were to hold, I think that if there are a lot of people getting November and December bonuses, potentially you could see a similar kind of bump. Personally, I think that's a lot of speculation. These have been a lot of theories that were put out on various YouTube videos over the past year, because it was such a frenzy and it was such a phenomenon that people were speculating that people were staying indoors, not spending as much money on other things during lockdowns, and then getting stimulus money. And it was mostly theorizing. There wasn't really a lot of hard data, if any, to back this kind of stuff up. So I think this is also further speculation, but something interesting to note and something to consider as we watch the market throughout the rest of November and into December. All in all, I think some kind of news or new personality connection with MetaZoo would be beneficial, because it feels like a little bit of a lull. I do check the markets pretty much daily, and you can kind of see like where things start to slow down, even though it's still daily. Flesh and Blood, Tales of Aria, booster boxes, and cold foils have definitely kind of slowed down. I noticed that Rudy from Alpha Investments, after he does like a booster box opening for Tales of Aria, or talks about Tales of Aria in some way, that then you go to TCG Player the next day, and suddenly after 4 days of no sales, then there's like 5 sales that day, right? So you can see that some people are coming in and being moved and affected by those videos and taking action. But the question is, how consistent will that market reaction be? Personally, I have started moving money into Tales of Aria. I picked up a case of 4 Tales of Aria first edition booster boxes. The prices are so low right now, and I agree with Rudy from his latest videos talking about how there's just so much fear and negativity and uncertainty around Flesh and Blood. But I will say this, the cold foil cards are really beautiful cards. The Flesh and Blood game is does seem to be a very strong game. I've seen the gameplay, I've learned to play the game, and I think MetaZoo honestly is much more like sports cards, and is very collectible, and people like to build binder sets and speculate on them, and people like the aura around MetaZoo and the potential for, you know, sort of quick money that can be made, and seeing if you can get the super duper secret rare, 1 of 100 cards and all of this stuff. And Flesh and Blood, but the bad side is I really don't personally believe in the MetaZoo gameplay. I think the fourth wall is kind of, yes, it separates it from other games, but I feel like for me personally, it's such a hassle. I would not want to deal with the environment and the surroundings. And I wonder if other players also feel like they just want, the cards themselves to work on their own, and you don't really sort of have to think about all of this secondary stuff, right? And I know people have talked about in other videos about how would that work in a tournament setting and whatnot. And I think it just gives it a unique identity and adds to its collectability. And personally, I think the actual gameplay side of MetaZoo is intentional in that it makes it like Pokemon. People collect Pokemon, and yes, you can play the game, but it's not known for its playability, right? So in that sense, the actual gameplay functions on the card, and the aesthetic of how the card works, and the aesthetic of its abilities and energy cost and all this stuff, it almost just kind of ties it more to Pokemon as a collectability more than it enhances it as a game from a gameplay perspective. So that's a little bit of a weird take, but in a way, I just think it makes them look more like Pokemon cards having gameplay, even if no one really is, even if there aren't a lot of players and there isn't a lot of oomph behind the gameplay itself. Again, that's just my personal opinion, so I still love MetaZoo, but really mainly as a collector. Flesh and Blood, on the other hand, I think is very strong. The game is very, very good. All right, it is a little bit complicated, but once you learn it and you get really into it, it just has a really nice flow to it. It is very different from Pokemon and Magic the Gathering, but the gameplay is, but it works nonetheless. So it's very unique. If you watch any of those gameplay footages from the tournaments they've been having, and with the announcers or the commentators and all of those, and I mean, it's a game that is fun to watch, and you can see that people get really into it, like professional Magic players have done with that game. So I think that's really strong, and that's a very positive side for me to get into it, mainly as a collector, because I just don't have time to play that much. I think the cold foils are very collectible. I bought a Crown of Seeds cold foil, and I have to tell you, it is absolutely stunning in person. So you can see this crown here is very has the cold foil treatment, and just like you almost don't notice it until you cast it in a particular light, and then it like glows like an aura almost on her head here, and then the very fine details around the crown. It's just really, you look at that card and you're like, this is a very premium card, right? And combined with it being very rare in terms of its pull rates, and if enough people play the game or are just interested in the game, because it does have a lot of viability because people do play it, there are going to be collectors or investors who want to go after these cold foils or these sealed boxes. And you can tell from the gameplay combined with the cold foils, the first edition, the way it sort of mimics Magic the Gathering in certain ways, how the owners or the creators kind of look to Magic's beginning as an influence for their game. There's just a lot together that I think is going to make it work very strongly in the long term. I'm a little bit more bearish on MetaZoo in terms of the gameplay. I want to see them do some crazy tournaments with these fourth wall effects and market those and have commentators and do all of this stuff. They need to make that movie or that cartoon or whatever, and start spreading it into other areas if they want it to succeed. And I think they need to do that more quickly. I think before Wilderness. I don't personally think that Wilderness will be as popular as Nightfall. I think the continued growth, if MetaZoo is continuing to succeed, will be in the Cryptid Nation booster boxes, the Kickstarter product, and Nightfall. I just think Nightfall is very, very distinct with its Halloween themes. And Wilderness just feels a little bit more generic because you already have some monsters that live in the forest in these other sets. And so I'm just I could be wrong about that, and we'll have to see. And I'm probably wrong about the gameplay, right? I haven't had time to really delve into that game, but it just feels a little bit more complicated. I watched one gameplay video with Red Zone Rogue. I think that's the name of the YouTuber. Yeah, this Red Zone Rogue. Go to his channel. He has a really excellent gameplay video of him testing out the game, and it looked really fun. But there were a couple hiccups in there where they were like trying to think about. They were like asking each other questions about the fourth wall mechanics, and they had to think about it, and it seemed almost kind of arbitrary and not a lot of fun at the time. Like it was just like an ability check that they had to do in the game. And then there were a few cases where they just didn't really understand exactly how the card worked, the way it was worded. I could do a whole nother video on that because, in my opinion, the text is so small on those cards. It's really, and I'm wearing my glasses and looking at the cards, and I have to hold the card up like this to read what the ability does. I think that is another negative on the gameplay side. But guys, that was a long digression on the gameplay, and I just wanted to give my take on that. Obviously, I'm still very bullish on MetaZoo as a whole. I think it can survive on that sort of sports card-like collectability, honestly, if they do that right. But I think that going forward, they need to expand it in other ways. They need to get that movie done. They need to do a video game. I know, like, long-term, I think it was the Meta Bros channel talked about how, like, Mike wanted to do a theme park and all this stuff. They need to start spreading out into those other outlets and marketing the game better, because right now I think you have to kind of be in card games already to know about MetaZoo. And then there's a lot you like about it once you're in, but they need to do things to broaden their audience. Alright guys, that's it. Those are my thoughts for today. I know I kind of digressed there about the gameplay side of MetaZoo, but I wanted to give a little bit of potential negatives as well, for if you're thinking about getting into MetaZoo in some capacity. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think? Have you tried to play the game? What do you think about the gameplay? Are you into MetaZoo for its collectability? What about its collectability do you like? And what are your opinions on Flesh and Blood, especially versus MetaZoo? Right now, would you spend, you say you had $1,000, would you be spending it on Nightfall products or Flesh and Blood, Tales of Aria, without having to divvy them up? You could only choose one. Which one would you do? Alright, thanks for watching my video today, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great week.